You are listening live to the Two Extreme Movie Show, our horror edition, where tonight we are talking about In the Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter. I'm Rob, your host. Co-hosting with me tonight is Dr. Veckman. Good evening, sir.
Yes, I'm here in case anybody has a nervous breakdown. I'm a doctor. I'm also a psychologist, so if you're going a little mad tonight, be sure to speak up.
So, I think you had a question that you wanted to ask everybody in the audience, assuming the stream is good and they can hear you. What would that question be?
Well, I just want to know if you've read Sutter Kane.
Have you
Apparently,
read
people
Sutter
are going.
Kane? I'm sorry, doctor. Go ahead.
Apparently, people are going a little mad. So
A little
maybe
crazy? Maybe a little touched? Because my
a
neighbors
little,
do remind
a
me
little.
I'm a little psycho too much. But that's
I,
why I feel like
you just
somebody's
gotta get in
watching
touch
me.
with reality.
Yeah, reality. Let's talk about reality because that's actually the basis of this movie. So this movie came out technically in late 94, I think in Italy, but 95 in the States. It's got Sam Neill in it as a book detective and really an insurance investigator that's hired to go find a horror writer that's missing. And this horror writer's written a lot of stuff. People are going apeshit over it. It was the Harry Potter before its time, but actually cool stuff. And so they got to get him. They got a gazillion dollars in this tentpole franchise. And the man, Charlton Heston, our winner of Chinner of the Week, our inaugural god, if you will, he's the guy that has a little bit of screen time in here and basically owns the movie, what scenes he's in. So the first question, Doctor, I've got to ask you is, with all the kookiness we're going to discuss in this movie, would more Charlton Heston make this movie more extreme?
If Charlton Heston was part of one of the monsters he's seeing, this turns into it, that would be kind of crazy. Or if Charlton Heston, you know what? It better if Charlton Heston was Sutter Kane. That would have been blowing my mind. I'm like, holy crap!
So this movie was actually just directed by Carpenter, but right off the bat, some of the things that we really noticed that, or at least I'll go first, Doctor, is that I thought of course, it looks great. I'm the biggest John Carpenter mark when it comes to watching films. I love the atmospheres of them. I get drawn into them. It can be a minimal plot and acting, but it can still suck me in, and that's the beauty of a good movie like this. I'm going to say this is a horror film, of course, not science fiction, and it's obviously very H.P. Lovecraft based. And insanity is basically the entire theme to it. But the music's fantastic. It looks great. It's got some really solid acting, especially by Sam Neill and what little Charlton Heston's in there. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts about it. Before we get to some of the specific scenes, what about you? Did you notice right off the bat you liked?
Well, the one scene that always sticks out to me is where he's cuts the books apart, and he discovers it's actually a location in New Hampshire. I'm thinking like, how the hell did he figure that out? He just decided to cut it, because he was having because when he originally read the book, he was having flashbacks, or just visions.
Yeah,
So I love that scene how it takes where they go to look for this guy, they go this visit, and she's driving, she sees a kid on the bicycle, and then she sees him again. He's an older person. He's like, he won't let me go home. I'm thinking, this if you're watching this movie and you're high, you're gonna freak out bad.
yeah. So the movie starts off with Sam Neill. He's in a psych ward. It's one of those typical situations where it's present day. Hey, what the hell's going on? Well, let me tell you a story, and you back up. So you know that something's going on, and of course, there's a little bit of a finish when it comes full circle, and. He's telling the guy about the whole story, and they start off by showing you how Sam Neill's this really good insurance investigator by taking an example of somebody that was committing insurance fraud, and he's making them sweat. It's a bunch of bit actors that have worked with Carpenter before, so they're easily recognizable. So they do a good job of that. But then when he gets hired on to find Sutter Kane, he's a little cynical. He's well versed in reality. It's all about the here and now and the present, which is pretty strong. And Sam Neill, he seems like a bit of a hard ass, which is really good because the people around him need him to be. And I think to your point there, Doctor, he starts getting a little enthralled by it because he goes, you know what? You guys are all trying to work me, and I don't like that. So yeah, I'm gonna take this case. I'm gonna find this screwball guy, and I
Well,
don't care if it's a big publicity stunt. But then he finds all these book covers, puts them together as he's starting to read the stuff, and he finds a map. And he's like, "This is really cute, guys. I really like what you're doing." So that's kind of a nice way to start it off.
Yeah, I mean, you also, I mean, it's a lot of people are comes to religion or anything like stuff like that. A lot of people, well, they don't want to believe at first or anything, and then sometimes you can get wrapped up into stuff like, so like, I'm not saying, this religion cults or any of that stuff, just saying most people are in denial. We can see the human mind. We see things, and we'll deny it. Well, no, that's not true. I don't believe it. But then, I mean, if you start getting dwelling into stuff, you start seeing things.
Yes.
And the thing is, everybody's different though. Some may see one thing, someone sees another thing. But then, this movie takes you like a psychological trip. It's like, you imagine yourself in his shoes. You know, where, if things start happening, he starts going a little crazy. And you're like, and he's like, I'm not insane. If I'm insane, then the whole world's crazy. You know,
Yeah.
and you see it as he slowly breaks down, and you're wondering, that's like they're talking about the book, how he's writing the book, and like, okay, is this guy writing to like the anti-Bible? You can kind of, and it kind of throws you in there, like, then you're like, well, maybe it's not. Maybe this is just like you said, like H.P. Lovecraft thing. Maybe it's just like that. Maybe it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, so anybody that's watching a movie that's not familiar with Lovecraft, he was a guy like a lot of late 19th century writers, early 20th century, roughly time frame Poe and the like. Obviously on drugs most of the time, had their own little bit of spouts of consciousness and everything too, that they would write things just to keep their addictions alive, and that made for some really great stuff. I mean, I even like to say not just the American writers too, but like say Conan Doyle for Sherlock Holmes. I mean, that's a clear example of it as well. And for H.P. Lovecraft, he wrote stuff that, thanks to Disney, or I should say, in spite of Disney, is in the public domain. So people in the horror world kind of can do certain things with his characters, like they can with Poe and whatnot. So if you don't know anything about it, it's just a guy that's a detective. He's a bit of a hard ass. Heston hires him, and Heston is so strong on screen. But he says, "Okay, you got to take this my hot assistant with you, because she's kind of like my fixer to verify everything." And of course, he's going to make a lot of money doing it. So they end up getting in a car, and they're going to go travel to this place that's in the middle of, they're not sure where. So the neat line that they have in the office there is where Sam Neill says something like, yeah, so he's here in this little point. This is a cute little map. And Heston's like, well, that's not on any map we have. And he says, yeah, but towns come and go. They disappear all across the country. Maybe it's on an older map or not, but I'm sure he's there. And when I find him, you guys can just pay me, blah, 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 whatever. So I thought that was kind of cynical and bitter, but also not in a negative way, in a practical, real world application. And I wouldn't say he's a hero of the story, because there's not a hero or villain. It's just a question of what
Remember,
side you want to believe.
yeah, he's also an insurance agent, so he's probably dealt with a lot of fraud.
Yes, yes, and he sniffs it out. He can smell it. He knows what's up.
Remember in the beginning, the guy who taxed him the axe, apparently, that was not the same guy who was cheating on his wife. He said he lost all the
No, no,
makeup.
no, no, no. So the great scene that makes him kind of convinced about the publicity is he's sitting there talking to somebody he just did business with, and it's a great shot where they're facing across each other on the left and right side of your screen, and you see this guy coming out of a bookstore with an axe, and he just chops through the window and says, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" before he gets shot up, and that's where you got the line from, and that seals it. And that's a
Yeah,
creepy scene, well shot, but by now he's like, okay, I got it. I'm hooked. I'm sold. Okay, maybe I'm having a little bit of nightmares reading this garbage stuff that he thinks is stupid, doesn't understand the attraction to it. But he's an insurance guy. He wants to deal with reality. So him and his partner, they start traveling her in a car, and he's kind of harassing her. He's messing around with her. There's obviously an attraction between the two and all that. The neat thing about this is, again, if you're watching this movie and you don't know about Lovecraft, you don't know about going insane, you're like, okay, this is kind of slow, it's kind of dull, it's kind of boring, it's kind of weird. But the neat thing is like what you're saying at night, they seem to keep passing by this bicyclist that seems to age. They end up running into him, but then do they really? And can he get out of the town? They don't know what the hell's going on. But the real killer scene is when he's falling asleep. And it looks like they're flying in like another dimension. Then boom! All of a sudden they pop up in the town, and instead of being like at 2 in the morning, pitch black, it's morning. I mean, it's a really cool transition. And then you're like, okay, the shit's getting real right about now.
yeah, especially when she's driving, and all of a sudden she's driving, and she's like freaking out. She's like, because she's almost falling asleep too, and then all of a sudden she's like, "What's going on here?" And you look underneath her car, you see water, and all of a sudden there's a bridge there, and she's just like, and there's all these bright orange colors and all that stuff, and all of a sudden they come out of this little like wooden bridge. She looks back and like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's like you went through like a portal or some kind of, you know. So
Yeah, I'm taking a look at some of the comments here too. They needed to give Charlton Heston a gun. It would have been more extreme. Yes, Charlton Heston was head of the NRA for a long period of time. He kept his mental illness kind of private, so I think he only did the occasional part. I think if you go back and look at like this and True Lies that he was in, where he puts Arnie to shame, I mean, you can kind of tell that he just can memorize his lines, and his delivery is still phenomenal. I mean, the guy's just incredible. A lot of people think he's a ham, like the original one before Shatner. Even I disagree. I still love them both. Here's the thing, though, Ed. I don't know. Yes, the agent that came through and attacked him, you don't know that that was the agent of Sutter Kane at first. You just thought it was a random
no,
crazy guy. So later
yeah,
on, when you hear some of the different facts as they're presented to you, you're like, oh, now it all starts making sense, and then you start realizing that this guy, he is getting worked, even if he thinks he's not. So he's going, no, I'm doing this by choice. Some people would say, no, it's your fate, but the neat thing about this movie again is it's really in stages, because here you're still like, yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit. Here they are in this town, but something weird happened, and now comes like the real detective part where they're trying to look for him, and they get into the town and they don't see anybody. The lady's looking around. She sees a dog running with kids chasing the dog, which looks a little weird. And then there's a neat shot too where you see it kind of in the background, but in the foreground it's blurry. And then they, of course, as they do a cutaway and they flip, you see that it's an axe with blood on it.
yeah.
So it's little things like that that make you go, okay, okay, something's coming up. What menace is this? JP4 says it's the mouth kind, which is probably the best, especially for playing just the tip. So yeah, the second part of it, where they're in a small town. What did you think of that, Doctor?
Well, when they're in it, it's a small little hick town. And the first thing they come across, remember I think they went to the hotel first, or they go to the church first.
Hotel first, because they got to get a room. They got to get
Hotel,
set up for the
yeah.
night.
And then she tells him like, didn't she say like she I think I'm on order it, but I remember her saying to him that that little lady's gonna kill her husband. No, and he's like, "You're crazy," He's like, "She's a sweet little old lady. She's like highlighted in her body, or it's gonna bone her body to do it."
Yeah, when they pulled up to
And
the little hotel there, she was starting to recognize, hey, wait a minute, this town is exactly how he writes it, because over here in the garden was a blah 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 from this book, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember this. So again, watching it, I watched it again last night, and I said, "Yeah, man. Even if you watched it the first time, you might have ignored that. They're just talking, whatever." But now watching it again, you're realizing they're giving you clues about what's really happening on the big picture of the movie, but it doesn't make sense yet, because to your point, she's in there. The old lady's like, "Yeah, this lady murdered her husband. It wasn't chilly, but did something with him." And then she's looking at the big picture on the wall. It looks like a, forget the name of the it's not Surratt, but it's kind of a famous painting takeoff on it. But every time she looks at it, the picture changes.
yeah, and I mean, just like I said, like, and you go after this, the whole hotel scene. They go to like where the church is, and you see all these guys with the with guns. First they're there, and he's looking at it, and then and she's like, "We gotta leave." Like, why? He's like, "These guys have guns." And she confesses that she's read the script, and like she doesn't know how it's happening, but apparently everything's happening because she's like, only person that knew about this was me and the agent. So she's like, she's freaking out,
Yeah.
and then everything she's saying is coming true, and he's like, oh, I know you're playing me and all stuff. But what's creepy though is they show like the kids are like, give me back my son. The guys are with guns and all, and the door opens up, and like, the little boy's there, and it keeps closing, opening, closing, and finally opens up, and then you see Sutter Kane there. That was freaky.
Talk about Sutter Kane. Watching him, what was your take on him? What was that emotional initial
Well,
reaction?
when I first saw him, I'm thinking like, I was just fooling on. I'm like, I'm thinking, is this guy like the Antichrist? Is it they're trying to say like, or he's a prophet writing the Necronomicon, or like the anti Bible?
Hmm.
That's not because that's what I was thinking right away. I'm like, is as you get further this movie, he talks about how, well, these people they're telling me they know what to do and stuff, and all, it's and you see like or she goes to the church later on. You see her, she walks in there and like she walks to the door, and also the door is gone behind her. It's all like nasty, like red, and it's like looks almost like flesh or something, like skin.
Yes.
It's all around there. Yeah, and you just look at the door to the right of them. It's pounding, pushing in, so it's trying to get out, and it's all covered in black tar slime and stuff. I'm thinking like, man, like what is he got legion in his head? You know, like the demons telling him what to say, everything, and what the rights.
Hmm.
And so they're throwing that into you, like kind of like a prophecy thing, like like they kind of like the biblical thing.
Yeah,
Then,
Marsupial Gamer saying in channel at some point he says they should see the church from the hotel room, and she shows them they can. And yeah, that was right before they. That's actually how they knew to go to the church there.
yeah,
We're skipping over some of the town stuff there, but yeah, she goes, well, if you remembered, it was actually through like the east or west window or whatever. So she walks to the other one and just like does it, and they see it, and he's like, oh shit, and that's when they go, and these people come up too. But of course, when you cross that boundary, that's like the point of no return, which is a great song by Kansas, but it's very applicable here because by now you start wondering, wait a minute, is she compromised? Is she a messenger? Because she's not acting. It's a tough position, I think, for her to be in Styles because she's supposed to go along with it, but she's feeling these feelings that um, she can't like hide. And like at one point, she starts throwing himself at him, and you're like, that kind of came out of nowhere. That feels forced. What's going on? But even with her
yeah.
interactions with Sutter Kane, he's basically saying, yeah, you need to go forth and spread the word of blah blah blah. In this sense, blah 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 talk. But then they just show you a couple things, and that's it. So
Well,
at this point here, when she,
and it's I was like, man, this movie's getting like real trip. I'm like, what am I watching? The Ninth Gate or something like this? It's like
yeah,
I'm
it's
just
years
waiting for
before
like someone
that
to come
too,
out.
but it's similar kind of actually, yeah.
I'm just waiting for someone to come out and like have like a priest, have a cross and throwing holy water, repent, repent. I'm thinking like, man, this movie's like tripping balls. I was like, it's good, but the end are like, what the hell did I just watch?
Well, like I say too, you can watch it through a few different lenses, and so I think things start to pick up a little bit here because basically, he's like, I got to get the hell out of here, and you start noticing when people are
Well,
compromised because they get the
dude,
baggy eyes, and so you get the scene where the innkeeper, the old lady, she's like,
yeah,
get away, get away, get away, and you hear some moaning, and
yeah,
when he leaves, you see the old man that's her husband is at her feet, and I'm like, that's pretty cool.
it's like I mean, just a part when you see her, she comes back from visiting the Sutter Kane. He's like, dude, we gotta leave, and he looks at, he sees her in there because first he came across the deformed or monster like tentacles. She's chopping up her husband in the basement.
Yep.
So that Heston, he goes upstairs and he sees her, and she's like, these tentacles coming from the door. He's like, what the fuck, and it's because it's just because I mean, like, this is like turning into like a creature feature movie. I'm like, okay, is this like gonna be like demons, aliens? What's going on here? And you're just trying to follow along with this movie, and like I would say this is a good movie. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah, so
Uh,
basically, we're getting into the third act where, right before the third act starts, he keeps trying to leave town, but he ends up getting kind of like teleported back in the middle of town. He doesn't know what the hell's going on, so he's starting to like question things. He meets Sutter Kane, who basically says, "Bro, you got to take this thing back because that's your role in it, and I'm gonna write it." And he doesn't want to believe it. He believes he's the master of his own fate. Um, he tries to burn it when he's going back to town,
dude, dude,
but a package is left for him, and it happens to be that, and he's tripping out on the bus ride getting
yeah,
back home.
I love before this how he tried to leave town 3 times. He tried to drive away, and finally he's like, well, "Screw it, I'm gonna run to the crowd." But then she's standing in the middle of the highway or of the road to clear out, and he just swerves like he doesn't want to hit her because he's still kind of his feelings are hurt. This girl.
Yep.
I mean, then yeah, but yeah, and then he's basically he has to go the Sutter Kane. Yeah, that's what Sutter Kane tells him. It's my manuscript. It's your job is to go the deliver this to people. And he's like, I won't freaking do it. And she's like, well, you have to, like, and like, and he rips, like, he comes apart, like Sutter Kane turns into like a page of a book. You see the pages fold down. It's just like, okay, this is like getting weirder and weirder. But he said as he get finally he's running and these monsters are chasing whatever was locked behind that door. They're all and she stays behind. She's like, I can't leave. I was written, I'm not. And yeah, he goes back. he said he starts going crazy. He's like he's asking people, "Have you ever heard this knowledge?" And he's like, "I want to see your supervisor." You can tell he's get the twitch. He's starting to go a little insane.
Yeah, yeah.
And he gets back to like Charlton Heston, and Charlton Heston's like, "Well, it's crazy. Even if the story's all true, I never sent you that. I sent you alone."
Yeah,
You know,
he says that's a great story. If you could write it, I would publish it.
you're right. Yeah, yeah.
And
He's like, "Well,
he's
no."
like, who's this Linda? This is the one you said I sent you.
so, so he's already got the twitch. He's already breaking out. He's like, "The hell's going on here?" He's like, he's like, "Well, if it's not true, then I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy though."
Yeah, which leads us to me the most cynical, the best line of the movie, and to me, it's just a fantastic delivery by performance by Heston. I know it's just a simple line, but delivery is everything. The line can suck, but if you got some weight behind it, it's great. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the magic button now, and hopefully there won't be too much of a
Quiet,
delay
I'm
for it.
distributed. Even if everything I've said is totally Looney Tunes, I know this book will drive people crazy.
Well, let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I may be crazy, but this book will drive everybody nuts. So I think you're seeing it right now. And he's like, well, I hope so. Movie's coming out because it's all about making sales. And yeah, it's about this time where you start going, he's gone, he's toast. And now you're realizing, yep, everything is true. And so what's left for him to do? He read the stuff. He goes crazy. He's walking around in present day reality, and he acts a guy, and
Yeah.
ends up going to the loony bin for it. So we're
Yep.
pretty much at the end of the movie, but you don't know that. So you're like, how is this going to end?
Hey, base. Yeah. And then remember, he's in his room. He wakes up, and he also he hears like mob people getting attacked outside the asylum, and then he finds out he's alone. It's basically like a deserted town, and and it's basically what you want to call it, like Night of the Comet, come almost with Orson Welles. His War of the Worlds on the radio. You hear the guys like, "Oh, people are starting to go crazy. People are at the farm. You can't trust your neighbor. Can't trust your loved ones. Friends, family. And if you are infected, stay away from everybody." He goes into the theater, and he's like, it shows him. It says like it says what was it called? The name of the was it called In the Mouth of Madness, or was it
Yeah,
called
he's watching the movie,
yeah. So he's
and
watching
he's
it, and
starring in it.
yeah. So he's still in his what you could call it, the medical gown, over it called they get for the patients.
Yeah,
So he's in there,
it's
and he's
crazy
just sitting there,
suit.
and he's watching as it's playing out, and he starts laughing, and he's crying, he's breaking down because he's like he's in a nightmare. And then like literally it goes right into the rock music, which is amazing. It's like uh, it's like there you go. And you're just left like, did he finally snap? Was this ever real? Any of this real? Is he still in the same asylum?
And he just
Or
starts laughing while he's eating his
yeah, I know,
popcorn. He's like, "Hey, this is pretty extreme."
I know. Extreme madness.
Yeah, and that's the whole beauty of it is he realizes the end of the world is upon us. Everything that was written is foretold shall be coming true. He manages to get out, and of course that's for us, the watcher, to kind of see what's going on. And when he just notices, yep, there's nothing I could do about it. So, like the single guy he doesn't get mad about it. He just accepts it, and the movie ends. And yeah, I mean, to me, I think just the movie, like I say, I'll watch anything John Carpenter's been involved in, a good, bad, or whatever. But for me, that this had a special place in my heart because Carpenter, pretty much by this point, was not producing that much. It was considered past his
No.
prime. He was not getting a lot of things to do. That plus, Carpenter's a big video gamer and music guy. He loves doing that stuff, and he's got children. So you can understand he wants to do what he wants to do on his own time. So never want to say that's a negative thing. I just wish there was a lot more Carpenter to watch because, like I say, whether you think this movie is great or not, you can watch it a couple of different ways. That means you can watch it a couple of different times. You've got great acting with Sam Neill, with Charlton Heston, who's in there for a little bit. And at the heart, I think, just as a guy, for me, my natural instinct is I love detective stuff. I love watching stuff where people are trying to
Hmm.
figure stuff out, and I don't know it. And I'm going, okay, he sees that,
Yep.
that's cool, I missed it. Or I think I know this, aha, I was right. Or no, I was wrong. Or hey, that's a good point. But again, watching it a second time, they tell you everything that's going on while it's happening, or even ahead of time in the movie, but it doesn't appear that way as it's going on. And only when they start to get to the town, you might start realizing, okay, there's going to be a supernatural element to it. You don't realize it's necessary an actual dystopian thing until the end, and that's the insanity. And if you believe in it,
Yeah.
that's great, and that's the whole power of H.P. Lovecraft and these other beings and all that other kind of stuff. So what starts off as like an insurance investigation kind of slash horror movie ends up being a end of the world dystopian kind of thing, and I think it's a fantastic film. I love it. What about you, Doctor? What are your
I
final
mean,
thoughts?
this is my first time watching this, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And when I watch again, probably wait a little while so I can maybe I might. I'd say this is a movie I'd like to watch with friends and watch their reaction to this.
Yeah,
Because like I said, this is a movie like everybody has their own opinion at the end. Not everybody thinks it. Like I said, like I connected to like a biblical thing. Like the Legion, which is basically a horde of demons, where they're all. So I mean, but the other person might have another take on it, viewpoint. This is those movies that make you think,
yeah.
and I love them.
Some people may not like that. Some people can watch on a very superficial level, but the music's great. That just the scenes are fine. There's enough dialogue where you can watch it on low and not and just kind of follow along a little bit. So I like that. Looking through the comments here, even Von Scriver says this reminded me of a David Lynch style film. Yes, because I think with Carpenter, I mean, you get certain shots that are, they have that depth in the background, but also he really loves that wide, super wide angle, which is great. But just even like the church itself, that's a real church in, I think, Canada where they filmed
Yeah,
it. But just seeing the sky in the background and everything and shooting from the ground up, it seems intimidating, like it's bowing down at you. There's just not, lots of little things that just add to what the story's supposed to be, which is it's getting darker as it goes on and on. And
I mean,
somebody like Sam
going
Neill, it just adds a lot to it in his role. He's not a goofball or anything. He's the real deal.
going back to the scene where she's like, she left him at the hotel. She walked out and she drove off and she tried to get away from him. I remember her. She came across those kids playing at the ball, and she like these kids are all deformed. I'm like, wow, like what is with these? It's like wrong turn almost like like everything is deformed. The kids, and she's like, where's your parents? Like, you are, mommy. We're all your children. And she's like, what the hell?
And I want to say at one point, and I don't know if it was the first scene with the dog and the kids, the dog's running, and I want to say it's a three-legged dog. I don't know if I saw that right or not. I was like, I gotta check that out next time I watch it. I never noticed it. Like he's deformed too. And I don't know if that's just them
Like,
transitioning or not, but it's just enough of a weird visual to kind of make you feel unease. So when Carpenter throws the next one at you, and a couple scenes later, it just builds for it. So it's kind of like
eh,
when he's trying to leave the town, when he goes to see the innkeeper, he looks back at the picture and he realizes, hey, that picture's different. But we get a close in view of how the
yeah,
creatures are actually now in that photograph as they're starting to come into our world from the
yeah.
other world.
You get a Call of Cthulhu feeling
Yes,
with the tentacle monsters, the squid people.
yes,
Yeah, so and that's classic. What you call him? Not Wells. It's the other guy, Lovecraft.
yeah. H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, this thing's basically a Lovecraft thing. The guy who wrote
Yeah,
it, I guess, was shopping around for a couple years. Carpenter eventually got attached to it, so he directed it. So Carpenter didn't really write this himself, but that's cool.
and
It's a good
I
film.
I love these movies. I mean, another movie just like it was The Fog, the one with Thomas Jane. Where everybody it's a survival. And you don't know what's going on. You think you know what's going on. Yeah, even that had a plot twist at the end.
Yeah, and the original Fog is fantastic too by Carpenter. I think you're talking about the remake, correct?
The remake was still good. I liked it.
Yeah, it's tolerable for a
And
remake, I suppose.
you think you know how it's going to end, and then it doesn't, and it changes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this is the kind of movie we were wanting to talk about for Halloween. That's why we'd wanting to do a horror stream on here. We had originally did one a few weeks ago. We covered a small, extremely small micro budget film by a Central Florida guy, and it's called Impulse with William Shatner in it. It's a really bizarre, weird film. So if you haven't listened to that or seen the movie, check both of those out. We're going to stop here in a moment. We're going to set up and get ready for our top 10 of, I believe it's 1993 tonight at 8 o'clock with E. So I'm looking forward to that. All
Is
you guys are obviously
is it
welcome to
93?
join.
I thought 93 was last week.
93, 94, who cares? Whatever the year is, it's going to be a list, so we're going to go over it. It might be. I don't really know, honestly. I got to check my
I
list,
care.
bro. Yeah, I'm
I
not the list
care. I
guy.
care about the list. The list is important.
Where would this movie be on your horror list?
On my horror list, I've always been more into like the vampires, werewolves, kind of that stuff, which is probably call me a norm because PC, that's the big thing. Everybody went crazy over on the world, but I kind of love that stuff. But I also like it when this is psychological too.
Yeah.
Like my favorite movies are the ones I like. I get bored with the slashers. You know, I Know What You Did Last Summer and all that stuff. It's like it's the same thing over and over again. We've already seen Jason. We've already seen, Michael Myers. This this is different, and this is great. And it thrives on being different. It's not the turbo. It's not the typical thing you see every day.
Yeah,
So I would
Marsupial
rate this.
Gamer is saying, and I don't know if you would agree. This he says Event Horizon is better. I remember seeing it. I remember not hating it. I'd have to go back and look at it to see what I can recall about it. I do know that from another suggestion we had from a member, we did the vampire one from 1985, whose name escapes me.
Life Force.
That's it, Life
Life,
Force. Yep.
Life
And
Force.
then we also did the one that was kind of like sci-fi horror on the ship that had Dennis Quaid in it,
Oh,
that
that was yeah.
Pandora.
Yep.
So we have that on our, I think, our science fiction show too. If you guys check that out too. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Psychological stuff. Horror movies are fantastic. Science fiction are as
I
well. So we're definitely trying to increase the
I love
catalog.
that stuff. I mean, Aliens is another great movie. I'm not trying to say because everybody loves it. I love it because the fact, well, it's space horror. It's like, you know, and it's not woke. I mean, so a lot of these movies, like are great because there's no political agenda. It's just someone who wants to tell a great horror movie. So
Yeah, guys, In the
and
Mouth of Madness, John Carpenter. Check it out. Just because Heston's in it, it's an extreme movie, so it obviously passes. It passes the test, bro. So,
yeah,
Doctor, say goodnight.
I just want to say real quickly, you guys, have you read Sutter Kane?
Get your Soylent Green pills. Get ready for Top 10
Right?
1993. Cheers, guys.
We
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for joining. Good night.
and stay extreme.
Extreme.